All right, we are live. Andrea worked out her technical difficulties, and we are all here right now. So
It
I
wasn't
should
even technical difficulties. I just didn't know how to switch my from my husband's Google account to mine. It's having
any Google
trouble.
account, any Google account would have been fine.
Oh well, it had to be
So
mine.
here we are, and we I should make a mention how this Andrea and I were chatting the other day, and she said, Paul, I've never been on your channel, and I was thinking, she says, you have posted conversations that we had on my channel on your channel, but I've never been on your channel. And what that meant to me is that you and I have never done a Randos conversation,
Correct.
which
Yes.
is really interesting because very soon after I posted my first video about Jordan Peterson, you sent me an email and I answered you. And then it was a while later that you said, I sent you an email. And then I was like, did I answer you? And she said, yes. I said, oh, good. So today we are going to make up for that deficiency. And I thought we would do a Randos conversation, which is really funny because back in the OG days of the Bridges of Meaning Discord, Andrea was very much a staple there, and she was doing all sorts of other conversations on her channel and lining things up, and she has her stuff she does on Twitter. So in this corner, many people already know her, but I thought we needed the canonical conversation about Andrea's life.
I need to turn
So
my light down. Sorry,
that's
I'm too
okay.
bright. I'm just too bright.
You see, the problem is when you talk to a YouTuber, they're paying attention to all of their stuff. Is the lighting right? Is the sound right? Usually with Randos, it's like just whatever in the back with a Zoom call and off we go.
I
So
know. I'm too picky. Well, actually, the funny thing is, over the I don't know years, I mentioned about how I'm like, oh, I want to be on your channel someday after we recorded, and you're like, oh, you got to get in line.
did I say that? I'm sorry. So
No, I laughed. I thought it was funny. Like it was. You're like, you gotta those spots. They go. So good luck.
they do. It's so hard because either you sort of have a line or you jump the line, and then so anyway,
Well,
so
I
we
had
are.
just had you on. Like I just had you on
Oh,
mine, and so I think that you were like, well, I'm gonna kind of put you on my channel anyway. Like you were gonna post it. So
yeah.
I feel like it was maybe bad timing when I brought that up,
Oh.
but it's fine. No, I'm not here
Well,
to make you feel bad,
we're
Paul.
fixing it today. We're fixing it today. So let's begin. You live in Canada. Many people know
I'm
you.
wearing my Canadian colors accidentally. I didn't even mean to.
Many people know you as a Canadian, but you were not born in Canada.
I was though. My mother's American
Oh, okay. All right.
and she's American, and she very much never became Canadian as long as she lived here.
Oh,
So I grew up, and my father passed away when I was 10 months old. So I was raised by an American mother and was closer to her family who lived in the States and who still live in the States. My mom has since passed away in my early 20s. She passed away. But I very much was raised in that, like, I just very much had an American identity in the midst of Canada.
so
And I always loved
how did your
Americans.
parents meet?
Oh, so there is this tiny town. It's called Three Hills, Alberta, and it is the home of Prairie Bible Institute, and it's one of the old school institutes from back in the day. It's kind of like Moody Bible Institute. Do you know that one? Um, so like I know that that's in the States. So it's very traditional. I don't know how it is now, but is yeah, it's they both came from quite traditional backgrounds, and but she was a teacher and my dad was a student. an older
Really?
student, but still, she
Oh,
was
your mother was teaching
yeah,
at the
at the
Three Hills
school.
by at the Prairie
Yeah.
Bible Institute.
And my dad was a student, but he was an older student. I think that she was 36 and he was 30 when they got married. So,
Wow.
yeah.
So, well, let's wind this back a little bit more. Where did she grow up, and how did she become a teacher at the Prairie Bible Institute?
So she was born in Susanville, California,
Oh,
but
that's not too far from here.
yeah, yeah, I have quite a bit of family who live around your area. But they moved my dad or my dad, her dad, my grandpa. Um, he met my grandma in Monterey, California. I believe he was stationed there post World War.
Okay.
So I'm my age, like my grandparents are from the 40s. My mom grew up in and graduated from high school in the 60s. So I'm about a generation removed from what most people are. Like my mom was born in 1947, whereas most people's parents would have been born in the 60s. Like most of the people who I know that are my age.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, so they moved after the war. They got married. My grandma and grandpa, my mom's parents, they moved to Arizona to Casa Grande, and they were cotton farmers. And yeah, and my mom grew up there and stayed there, and
Very
and
rich,
then
very rural, because Susanville's high desert. I mean, even
yeah,
today, except for the prison up at Susanville, there's not a lot up there.
yeah. Well, I don't even know why they were there. Like they were quite. I think that they were quite poor at the very
Yeah,
beginning, but I mean, then there's all these, there's these stories, the family stories.
yeah.
They did pretty well when they're farming. It's family business. Then there was the bankruptcy, and then then he became a manager of another person's cotton farm, but then his parents moved away to start somewhere else, and my grandma was so happy that the in-laws moved away, and she embraced the bankruptcy because she was like, yes, I'm finally free of these controlling Hayneses. The last name was Haynes anyway.
So they clearly
So
went to church.
yes. Oh, yeah. So you asked me how she ended up coming up here. So yeah, they did, and I believe it was an aunt and uncle who didn't have kids, but they wanted to pay anyone who wanted to go to Prairie Bible Institute, where they went. They would pay for their like nieces and nephews to go. So I believe an aunt, my great aunt and uncle, so her aunt and uncle paid for her to go, and then she went there, graduated, went over to Oregon, did some 5-day club stuff, VBS, Vacation Bible School stuff there for a couple years. Then moved back to Three Hills and became a teacher there. They weren't really called professors there; they were just teachers, I guess, at the time. And then met my dad, and then they got married, and then he passed away 2 years later. And she had my sister and me
Because you're
for 10
twins.
months before he passed away. So
Okay. And I mean, if she was 36 when they
So
married, I
she
mean,
was 38 when she had my sister and me. Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, we're twin. I'm a twin,
right,
but we don't look
right,
alike.
right.
We're fraternal.
But
So
you've posted some pictures of you and your sister on when you were young on Twitter, and they're
yeah.
adorable.
Yeah.
So,
We don't look anything alike. She's blonde and fair, and I'm not.
so what was it? What was it like growing up? I mean, your father passed away before you can remember him.
Correct. So he actually was a twin. He was an identical twin. So I know I have these like little interesting things.
Yeah.
There's no genetic anything because he was identical. I'm fraternal, just
Yeah.
happenstance.
Yeah.
But so I remember him. I remember my father's brother, but he unfortunately committed suicide when I was 7. So that's sad.
There's a
I
lot
have a
of
lot of
tragedy.
sadness. It sounds very
There's
sad.
a lot of tragedy in this story.
Yeah. I like to think it made me I've always I've always had a strange paradox of naivete alongside of like old hardship. You know, it's sort of a weird mix of both where I'm kind of an old soul who's rather naive. I like to think I'm not as naive as I once was, but I had a lot of very difficult things at an early age. But it was life. That's the thing. You don't think, wow, my life is so difficult.
No,
Good
no.
for me. Like I don't go around, thinking that.
Well, so your mother and you and your twin, this was your
Mhm.
family growing up. Did she continue to teach there, or were you around
No,
extended family?
no. See, we weren't really. No, they're all in the States. My dad's family were they're all missionary kids. His parents were missionaries in Bolivia. He was one of 9. My
Wow.
mom was one of 6. So my dad was one of 9, and they're weird. No offense to them. They were different. They were not friendly. They grew up in the bush in Bolivia with mean school teachers, and also I believe I don't know those grandparents very well. They've passed away long time ago, but I believe my dad's dad was abusive, verbally for sure, and I think that he may have hit the older ones. I'm not sure. So they were just they were not well adjusted in what I would say. That's what I would call them weird when I was young, not to their faces, but I would just think it. But as an adult, I'm like, oh yeah, they were not adjusted super well to society. So I wasn't. They lived around in the area, but we weren't really close with them. So we were always close to my family in the States, and we would always drive down and hang out there.
What did your mother do while you were growing up for a
So
living?
she, because of my dad, so she got the way that situation happened is she was able to receive a widow's pension, and she, I think because of him dying in a crash. I feel like this is really boring. I'm sorry.
This is not boring at all.
Okay. She received like a settlement just because of, you get insurance from being whatever. And um, there's a really, it's like a sad little fairy tale. So the poor sweet widow went to the Royal Bank of Canada, and there was a kind investor man that they connected her with who usually deals in high end bazillions of dollars. And he took her on as an account and found some really good low risk mutual funds type investments for her. And so she was able to, and she's one of those, again, children, she was a boomer but child of depression parents who knew how to save, and so only buying things on sales, like Flyers Day was Sunday. um and so she didn't really work until we were actually like just, and we found a housing cooperative where it was sort of like you could go on a subsidy, and so that was made it available so that she was not completely breaking the bank for paying rent. And so she didn't really start work. I think she became when my sister and I were getting a little bit older and we were in junior high, she started supplementing her living with doing some housekeeping stuff, but very low. It wasn't very often. It was a couple times from some friends from church. So it wasn't like a full-time gig, but she managed to live off of what she just those different things that she got from what she had, for what she had left to her, and what the Canadian and Alberta government gave. Like they're pretty generous with widows, to be honest. So there's an orphan's benefit and there's a widow's pension.
Wow.
So Canada's pretty good
It's
in
good.
that
It's bet
sense.
you were better off in Canada than Susanville or Arizona, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah. I know. People ask like, why didn't your mom move back? And I asked her that once, and the saddest thing is I can't remember what she said.
Oh.
Yeah, but
But now your father, one of 9 missionary kids, your mother taught in a Bible college, um, super religious background, super religious roots,
mhm.
kind of American evangelical Baptist-y,
Abs
that
oh,
thing.
Southern Baptist. My mom grew up full on Southern Baptist, where like instead of the like the the sheet with the unclean animals coming down, Like for us, it would be not us, but like her that side of the family, it would be like a bar coming down and then drink up. Like that would be that's like dyed in the wool, as they say, sort of staunch Southern Baptist.
So
we didn't attend Southern Baptist churches up here, but
Okay.
I think it is non-denominational. It used to be Brethren, but
Okay.
she wasn't married to that denomination.
And she never remarried.
No, she told me she did not want to take care of another man.
Smart woman.
So
I've had my father wasn't cold, and my mother says, "I'm not taking care of another man. I happily took care of your father, but not take care of
there seems to be a certain age. She was older anyway.
Yeah.
Being 36. Like I'm 37.
Yeah.
So I would have been married a year if I was my mom. My oldest just turned 11.
Yeah.
So very different. I've been married almost 30. Like, no, I've been married 13 years. So it's a very different life that she had.
So what was church involvement like growing up for you and your sister?
I'm so not used to going into the background. Like, I'm like, where's the topic that we're talking about, Paul?
You are the topic.
This is
a Randos conversation. You asked for this, and you're getting it now.
I'm so like, but like they want to get to the meat, and this is just like, boring.
No,
okay.
This is.
What was church life like? Okay, so I really when youth group came around, like always went to church. Youth group came around. I got really interested in that. Really enjoyed that. Was a youth leader also after.
When were you baptized?
I was 7.
Okay.
My sister and I both were. We were the youngest to ever have been baptized.
Were you very precocious in terms of?
It was more my mom just was like, oh, well, believers get baptized. So you're a believer.
7?
We've been a believer since we were 3. So let's get going, I was quieter growing up. My sister was the one who was more talkative. And so she would, when I was young, she would talk for me, not all the time, but sometimes. So I didn't start becoming more outgoing till I was in junior high.
Okay. So you get baptized at 7, and you're active in youth group.
Mm-hmm.
And was that all positive for you?
Yeah, I'd say I had good friends outside of the youth group, to be honest, like from school. But I would say I just really enjoyed being in a position where I could, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of me being a youth leader, but I suppose during, I enjoy, you know what it was? The youth events were really freeing for me in a way, because there's a lot of dressing up, and I wasn't allowed to go out for Halloween because it was of the devil. According to my mother, even though it technically has Catholic roots and was just All Saints Day Eve.
Well, if
and
the Pope is the Antichrist, of course Halloween is of the devil.
Well, anyway, I've always been salty about not being allowed to dress up and go out for Halloween. But we had like literally mind you, she would make me costumes for the youth events. Like I still have the Frodo outfit that she made me. I still have the cape. I still have the thrifted blouse, this thrifted silk blouse that I used. She made me the cape, she made me the vest, and we found a blouse that would fit a Frodo-esque. Even though I'm tall, I should have been more of an elf, but I had short hair at the time, so I was like, oh well, I guess I'm a hobbit. And we did. It was like an adventure heroes night or something, and I'm like, well, I am gonna be my hero, Frodo Baggins.
When did you first read Tolkien?
So I read The Hobbit in grade 7 for school. My mom was like, "Oh, Andrea, you'll love The Lord of the Rings. It just describes such rich land and architecture and just the rolling hill." And I was like, "Oh my goodness, that sounds so boring," is what that did to me. Thanks, Mom. So I wasn't interested. She told me I should read it, but I was like, "Oh, this sounds really boring. No, thanks." And then the movie Fellowship of the Ring comes out in grade 10 for me. And so it came out grade 10, 11, 12. it came out every, year. And I was like, Mom, you completely undersold this and gave me the wrong explanation and description of why I would like it. But I did. It's like, oh, but you're right. So I do. So I started, and I read all of them after I watched the first movie and went multiple times and was obsessed.
Now, Canada is a lot more secular than the United States. What was it like? So being active in church and then also going to a public high school. Did church feel sort of normal as part of the package as a teenager, or did it feel weird and sort of outside the life of your friends in high school?
No, a little. I went to a Christian school, a Christian private school until I was in grade 6.
Okay.
But it was quite expensive, and so my mom couldn't afford it after grade 6. So we went to the local junior high. And I honestly, I was like, oh, the desks don't match. That's weird. Like that was my first, I remember, impression. And also I was so sheltered. I hadn't even heard anyone be called a loser, let alone all of the swearing and whatever that I was exposed to. But I was like, oh, look, there's a world I didn't know about. So, I mean, it was secular in the sense that, yeah, like the kids were just like swore a lot, like for what I was used to. But I didn't feel there was the community church. Like I didn't go to the community church, but like it wasn't odd to be like, oh yeah, I go to church. It's like, oh, okay. There were also a lot of Mormons in my school, especially in high school, not as much in junior high, but a little bit. And there were a lot of Muslims, and there was a lot of Sikhs, and it was quite a mix. And so I didn't feel like, yeah, it wasn't a thing. It didn't feel that. And also Alberta, where I live, it's pretty conservative. It's like, I'd say probably the most conservative province in all of Canada. Yeah. So it's not as secular as maybe the East.
Okay. So you went to church all through high school voluntarily?
Yeah, I didn't really know I could not go. Like it wasn't really. Okay. It was my sister and I, we were obedient girls, and we just did as we were told.
All right. What happens after high school graduation?
Oh, I go away to Scotland.
Oh.
I lived there for around 6 months.
Okay.
With Youth with a Mission, YWAM.
Oh.
They have a leadership school called DTS, or Discipleship Training School.
Yeah.
I went and did that, and the funniest thing,
YWAM DTS shows up in various places in the PVK Randos archives.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So my sister and I both chose, I mean, they're all around the world, but we both independently chose Scotland because my aunt lived there as a missionary, but then she moved back, and it was like, oh, she's not there anymore. Oh, well, we're still going. So my sister and I went at different times. She went for the first half of the year, and then I went the second half. And I remember going for a walk, and this is just showing the growth of, and also just the, what is it? The pride of youth. I remember going for a walk with my mom, and she was like, what do you think you'll learn? Like, what are you looking to learn when you're there? And I was like, well, like, I know a lot. So, and I'm 19, I'm 18 or 19. Like, I know a lot. I mean, I don't expect them to teach me a lot because I know a lot about the Bible, Mom. You've taught me well. She was very like into her Bible and very much teaching us, baptized at 7, saved at 3, I had that, whatever. And I just was like, I don't know how much they can, teach me, but like, we'll
tell
see.
me about the YWAM.
Oh, I learned so much. It was so insane. Like, well, I just learned how much I didn't know. I learned how different other people are in the sense of like living with other people and, people needing personal space. I was like, why do you need that? I didn't feel like I needed that. I do now, but young me was like, but just being with people all the time is wonderful, isn't it? Such an extrovert.
Yeah, that's right. Such an extrovert.
Such an extrovert. Yes. And yeah, like, so we started off in a small town called West Kilbride, and we were in a gigantic, beautiful old manor that was turned into a base. It used to be a Freemason house. Um, and anyways, yeah, so that was great. I did the lecture phase there, learned a lot of cool stuff, and then went to you always go somewhere else. And so we did local ministry. Like some went to India, some stayed. My group ended up staying, and there were two other Canadians in my group, a guy and a gal, and they were both actually from BC. And so I ended up being in the Canadian group, and then the other couple of Europeans that were in our group. And so we went up to the north of Scotland, to Inverness area, and we stayed in caravans, as they call it. I mean, it's technically a trailer, but it's like a vacation caravan park.
Okay.
And we were overlooking Ben Nevis, and that was cool. And
so you're doing evangelism.
Doing slave labor. Like I remember meeting up with a friend, the Canadian guy, like a couple years ago now, but like, years since, and he was like, oh, the guy who ran the caravan park, he absolutely used us for slave labor there. Because we're here to volunteer. What can we do to help around where we live? Oh, well, here's some weeding. And
were those good years for you?
It was a good year. Yeah, it was a very good way of me getting out. And like, I was so afraid to go out on my own. It was good for me to literally fly across the world and have to find my way.
Yeah.
I'm meaning literally finding my way. I'm horrible with directions.
Oh.
So I that is a huge fear. Like how am I? And I didn't have a phone.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
So
I remember life before cell phones. Yeah, there's no phone.
Terrifying.
You have to find your way, and
yeah,
nobody was self-conscious because they didn't have a phone, because nobody had a phone. So
yeah. So, but it was good. It was growth, a lot of growth for me. I turned 19 just like days before I left. So
when you think back on yourself now, and you think back about the faith you had then, what was it like?
It was, I remember speaking with people who had a different view of, say, not necessarily predestination, but I specifically have a memory speaking with one of the teachers who came in to lecture, and he was saying, oh, well, I don't think that God knows how things will happen in the future. I think he has a tentative plan, but I don't think he knows how things will turn out. And it made me so uncomfortable and upset. He knows? What are you saying? He knows what's going to happen? Why are you saying these things? I feel like, God, I'm not listening. So like it made me feel so upset and inside and like on shaky ground, and like I can't, like it's like I can't. So my faith was one that you are not of a part. I can't be part of a community if you don't agree with what I've been taught. So it was fragile, but it was. Fragile yet persistent.
Okay. So after YWAM, you spent a year doing that?
Yeah. Well, no, 6 months. And then I think I worked the first 6 months of being out of high school. And then I went away, and then I came back and went to university for 4 years.
Okay. What'd you study?
I have a Bachelor of Arts degree in Christian Studies with a minor in history.
What university did you go to?
It's called Ambrose University. It used to be an Alliance. It used to be Alliance University College, and they mixed with the Nazarene University College, and then they just call themselves Ambrose University College.
Where is it?
Now.
Where's it located?
It's in Calgary. It's just in where I live.
Okay. And what was your faith like in college?
It had grown a bit sturdier. Being exposed to a different way of thinking helped me to see I'm okay still, and it's okay to disagree. I had a friend in university who I actually knew in high school, but we weren't really friends then. But so he ended up at the same university as me, and he, I remember it stuck in my head once, and him saying, "You know, it's okay if we disagree. That's okay." And I was like, "Right, yeah, okay." And then I was like, I believe that, and I've kind of stuck with that ever since.
Okay. Okay. When did you meet your husband?
I met him at Church Young Adults.
Oh,
Yep,
were
I
you in
know.
college?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I went to the Church Young Adults College and Career, whatever it's called, at my church as like, I'm a youth leader, but there's the same old of the people who were there, and there's a few. It was a different crowd who went to the College and Career Young Adult group, so I started going there, and I met him, and we were just friends. And I just remember him being, oh, good, it's Josh. I can talk with him because all the rest of the guys are just like the worst because they're so bad at asking questions. And I just get tired of having to manage these boys who don't know how to talk to people. No offense, but like, it's like you can only talk about the weather and what do you do for work? Oh, or are you in school? Do you like that? Okay, and then me giving and just Josh was good at asking me questions and asking me. I mean, I was good at asking him questions too, but he really stood out to me as someone who was just like, oh, good, I can relax and it flows. It flows well. I don't have to be on my toes and be worried. I hate pauses. I hate awkward pauses.
So how long did you date?
I had 9 months.
Oh, wow.
And we got more like a year if you count our engagement. We got engaged after 9 months.
Okay.
So yeah, he had to lock that down. I mean, Paul,
So
like,
were
come on.
you married in college then, or did you wait till after college?
I graduated. So so let's see, October of 2008
Okay.
is when we started dating.
Okay.
I graduated in April of 2009,
Okay.
and then we were married January of 2010.
Okay.
And I don't know if I think I maybe told you this. The very first date we ever had, did I tell you this? I told him near the end of the date when it was time to pay. I was like, okay, so, and I totally don't agree with this way of thinking anymore. Oh my goodness, I've very much changed in this. But I'm like, hey, so like, just so you know, I date for marriage. So don't know if that's
was he the first man you told that to?
No. But that's not true. Like I was in high school though.
Okay.
Like I was in high school and it was like, oh, I can't date for marriage. I'm in high school. Come on, me. So
So
so he was the first actual date I went on post high school that, okay, you might, as much as I might pretend and might make it seem, men were not beating down my door. They were not. I was very forward about what I thought. I'm tall. I'm 5'10", and I am not at my university. I was not the sweet pastor's wife that the fellas might be looking for. But anyway, so he's the first prospective actual husband that I was even decided to. I didn't know if it was a date. I thought he was doing a friends thing. And then I was like, I don't know if this is a date, but just so you know, this is what you're getting with me. So I didn't want to waste my time, Paul. I didn't want to waste my time. I'm someone who like very much would be devastated if I was like, okay, I'm going to invest in you. I'm going to give you my heart. I didn't want to even kind of try a little without him knowing because I didn't want to waste my time.
Yep.
And he was like, okay.
Now you often mention that you're 5'10".
Yeah.
Well, how do you feel about being 5'10"?
I love it. I love being tall.
Okay.
I've always enjoyed it. Except I mean, I've always felt like I'm not allowed to wear heels because of it. So which is odd. It's this odd double feeling of I like being tall, Even though like I am the tallest usually of my friend group. Most of the time, there's maybe one or two friends who are maybe 5'11" or the same height, which is very weird to be like, "Hi, friend, that's a girl and taller than me." But most of the I'm usually the tallest one, and so that's fine. It's nice. I like it, but also I also received so many negative comments, even if it's joking, about, "Oh, you shouldn't be allowed to wear heels. You're already too tall." And so I just those sort of things kind of when you're young, they kind of go to heart, and it's like, "Oh, okay, I guess I won't wear the big tall heels."
So,
What
and
kind of
then
what question is that? What made you
I
ask
was
that?
just curious. You often mention being tall, and you mentioned it with respect to guys weren't beating down the door because you're tall. And I know, I mean, some guys prefer some of the biggest guys prefer tiny, tiny women, which is really an interesting thing. And
Well, most women want to have a man be taller than
yes,
her.
yes,
And so I kind of put it on. I sound like I'm blaming the Bible school young men for. I'm like, "Oh, like you jerks, like you weren't interested in because I was too intimidating to you." But much of it probably is like I would want to. I always would have wanted to have someone taller than me, at least by a few. Like Josh is just 2 inches taller than me. He's 6 feet, and so
that's a nice differential. My
it's
wife's height comes right up to here, so.
okay. Well, like it's not quite that. It's like, "Oh, hi, you're just like a tiny bit taller than me." And if I wear
Yeah.
heels, it's like, "Hi, we're the same height." But it's enough. It's enough, and that already it whittles down the dating pool quite a bit when you're a certain height. It just does. Not
So,
all the time, but like just from people's proclivities, you know.
so you have three boys,
I do.
and their ages are.
So my oldest is 11, and then my middle guy is 9, and my youngest turns 7 in 1 month.
All right, all right. So those are wonderful ages, and that's a wonderful spread. And having three boys, and it's
Yep.
interesting because you grew up in a household, your mother and your sister and you, and so now
Yeah.
you're in a household where you're the only woman,
Full of testosterone.
full
I
testosterone.
never in a million years would have ever guessed that this is what it would have been for me.
Well,
I
here it is.
always imagined having girls and like maybe one boy.
Yeah.
So
So how did being a mother and a wife, because I'm sort of leading up to the email that you sent me,
mm.
um, and
Did
your
you
own.
find it? Do you remember it?
I didn't. I was looking for it while I was waiting for you to figure out your tech issues, but I didn't find it.
No, I can find it sometime.
But I'm glad I responded. So, at some point we're going to land in where, why it was that you, oh, let's shoot, how are we going to get here? Um, so it sounds like, I mean, the whole growing up trajectory, very Christian background. I mean, intergenerationally Christian, parents, missionaries. And for a lot of people, maybe who are not from, let's say, especially Southern Baptist roots, missionaries for Southern Baptist are elites. Pastors and
Oh,
missionaries are like, if someone's going to be a missionary, that's like, that's in that hierarchy, that's about as high as it gets.
I
And
didn't
so
know
you
that, Paul.
really?
No.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
you
well,
can.
I grew up, but not in it, but not really in it. Like
Okay.
hearing of it a little, but
Okay.
not.
And you
Yeah.
did YWAM, you did a DTS. I mean, you did all of these things, and then you go to a religious college, a religious university to get your degree. You meet
Hmm.
your husband in church, and
Oh, I
then
found the email, by the way.
oh, did you?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, I'm curious. You want to read it?
Right now? Do you want to
Sure.
finish your sum up?
No, because
Okay.
that's where I'm trying to get
Oh,
to.
okay, okay. So
Because this is how many years after,
let's
when
see,
was the date on the
July
email?
25th, 2019.
Okay. Oh,
So
yeah, yeah.
I
Okay.
joined Twitter 2018, June
Okay.
2018.
Okay.
And the year before that, in 2017, I watched, for a summer, I watched nothing but Jordan Peterson's biblical series.
Okay.
Like, I stopped
Let's
watching
start
television.
there then.
Yeah.
How on earth did you find Jordan Peterson's biblical series, and
Okay.
why did it fascinate you? Because
My sister sent me clips, not of
Oh.
that, but of him. It's when that one interviewer, and I can't remember his name, asked him point blank. This is one of the earliest times. Like, do you
Oh yeah.
believe in God?
Yeah.
He's like, I believe.
Did Jordan Peterson in his office with the dirty
The office,
t-shirt
yeah,
on?
I act as if God exists, sort of answer.
Right.
And then she wrote, I
Why
think
did your
this guy's a
sister
Christian. And then she wrote, oh, no, never mind.
Why
She
did your
just
sister
likes
send
finding
it to you?
clips. She just thought it was
Oh.
interesting. She thought she's interested. She's become a counselor, actually, in the time. She's was interested in psychology and is a counselor now, has her master's in counseling. And so she's just always been interested in psychology and stuff. And
She's never dipped her toe in this little corner, though. I've never seen her.
no, she doesn't do the online stuff, really. Not really.
Okay.
But I mean, I tell her about it. But she was the one who sent him to me.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, what's this? And then she was like, oh yeah, he talks about having this biblical series. And then I was like, oh, and then I watched the clip she sent me about where he talks about, like, I'm gonna like look into it. Sorry, I'm fixing my hair. I'm so distracted by seeing myself. I usually make it so I can't see myself when I'm recording. Anyway, sorry. So yeah, I was like, oh, I gotta look this up. And oh, look, lo and behold, they're all out. All 12 of those lectures were out when I had looked in 2017. So I watched all of them, and it really, like, I had been a mother for a number of years, and I hadn't done academic thought in a long time. And I really missed it. I loved school. Like, I did a degree without any hope of having any kind of like career. I just wanted to learn. I wanted to know. And I took things that I was interested in, not because I wanted to use it as a vocation, because I wanted to know the things.
She
And I
wants to know.
did, yeah. I was insatiable, my curiosity. That's why I ended up doing my podcast, because I'm just like, I need to know things. So anyway, so this reignited that like sort of thirst for the academic, and the different type way of thinking. And
But it also impacted your faith.
so it did. So at first it was like, oh, look at these interesting things, and I haven't thought of things in this way. Look at the way the way that he kind of melded the evolutionary psychology of our human species, and then put it together with themes and symbols from the scripture, and looking at he took it seriously. Like, he actually took it seriously. He wasn't on one side or the other of like the creationism versus evolution debate, and so it was refreshing, but it also made me confused, because when we get to where man sins, I remember rewatching it and trying to understand, and he didn't give much insight, because he's like, and I don't know why it was a bad thing for them to take the fruit, to be honest. And it seems almost like it was good. Like, I think he even says something along those lines. And I listened to another lecture of his on his podcast. And so, and where he actually does bring up, well, St. Augustine does say that it's so that then, the love of God can be shown through Christ, or something like that. So, but that wasn't good enough. And I was lost in the space where he lays out all of these evolutionary sort of tells that show up in our symbols of ancient peoples. The ripe fruit, and they looked at it, and it was good for food. It was red. Not red, but it was looked good. It was oh, look, our color ability to see in color and not in black and white, and oh, the symbol, what the snake means to our chimpanzee and bonobo brethren. And what all these different, I'm not, sorry, you can watch his stuff. Like, there's all these things. And to be clear, I'm talking about early Peterson. I wasn't interested in any of the politics. It's all this stuff, right? So I can read I'll reintroduce. So because I had already started doing my podcast by now. I started in February of 2019. And I've spoke to you about this before, and I've mentioned it on my podcast, and I guess I've had him on. That Benjamin Boyce was the one who really helped me to get started technically, even, and helping me sort of learn how to use Final Cut Pro to put together episodes and whatnot. So I start off.
Why did you do a podcast?
Why what?
Why did you do a podcast? I mean, you do a lot on social media. I mean, you do kind of period photography.
I do vintage clothing. Yeah,
vintage clothing. And, you know, it's very interesting when you do these pictures that are sort of, you know, some from the 40s or something. And
yeah,
I mean, it's a fascinating thing. And so, I mean, your boys are, you know, you get into this once your boys start getting into school. Your husband was studying, you know, to get his degree in computer science.
Yeah.
And you didn't. I don't get the sense that you got into this necessarily to make a lot of money or anything. I got the sense that you got into this as sort of in some ways how I got into it, sort of as a way of learning and exploring actively.
It's a mix of I wanted to participate. I didn't want to just be a viewer. I wanted to participate. I wanted to
break that fourth wall, as Grim Grizz says, right?
Yeah, I wanted to be part of it. And I very much am like, oh, I'm like, everyone's losing their jobs left and right. Well, I don't have to worry about it because I'm a stay-at-home mom. And, you know, I didn't really understand that this is a slice that you're being shown on social media. And not to say that people have lost their jobs. I don't want to minimize that. But it's also not quite as left and right as I thought it was. But I just thought it would be a different type of voice. Like, I thought it actually, I very much am like, oh, well, why would people want to listen to me? I never had any sort of hope to or desire to do a YouTube channel in the past.
Yeah.
But I thought, I think I'm a different demographic I'm a mother of 3. My children were quite a bit younger at the time.
Yeah.
And I thought it'd be an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
So
and there's a lot of mommy YouTube out there, but your YouTube isn't mommy
YouTube. No, and it's not at all. And there are other women who are not mommy YouTube interested.
Yeah.
So not to say that that's a bad thing.
No.
You know, like I love watching, you know, like fashion and style videos and looking into like vintage style and all those things. And that's a very feminine space within YouTube, even though YouTube is, I know, mostly male dominated, but I explore the feminine sides of YouTube. But I am very much in a space of discussing ideas and understanding and wanting to know. And so so I'll read. I saw you on Benjamin Boyce, and you seemed, I didn't think there was anybody who would, I haven't read this, by the way, since I sent it to you. I didn't think there was anybody who would understand it without being like, is Andrea questioning her faith? And is she like now moving away from God and being tempted by those atheists? And like, I just didn't think anyone, I didn't want to be setting off alarm bells. But I also just wanted someone who would understand where I'm coming from the space I'm coming from. And, you know, I was in a space where surrounded by scientists, surrounded by scholars who I had on my channel, who were just really seemed very like they knew the things and they had the answers as to why, you know, people just need to have a narrative, to have something, to have meaning. And that's what we do. We make this, we made it up, you know, all this stuff. So I'll read this. And so I saw you on Benjamin Boyce, and I was like, I want to talk with you. So good for me taking initiative, by the way.
Good for you.
Like I look at this and I'm like, man, I don't usually write people. So I'm glad I took initiative here because it's been, the fruits have been good, Paul. So I wrote, hi, Paul. I saw your latest episode with Benjamin Boyce. I'm friends with Ben and can tell that he really respects you. I've been looking for someone who understands faith along the teachings espoused by Peterson. Really, the idea of archetypes espoused by Jung. I have been going on a spiritual journey over the past few years, and I've been having trouble reconciling my faith with what I have learned about the need for people to have narratives. I listened to all of Peterson's biblical lectures, and I have been learning about the importance of myth and story to human societies. So funny. My YouTube channel is now 100% based
Isn't
on
that
narrative.
interesting? Isn't that
I
interesting?
saw this back then,
Yeah.
and I just took a long path to get to focus on it 100% on my channel now.
Yep.
Anyways, back to what I was saying. The importance of myth and story into human societies. I took theory of religion in school, but always viewed it from within my Christian worldview. Now I believe I am seeing these theories after taking a step back. And from what it seems, the idea that we need stories that are our own is all that matters. It's not about one being more correct than the other. Humans need meaning, and we have made that meaning over thousands of years with our narratives. But then I have this faith that says only one is correct. And I have many scientist friends on Twitter saying you must pursue the evidence without the answer in mind first. And I feel like I do have the answer in mind first, that Jesus is the answer. Is it that we evolved to make meaning out of stories, which caused social cohesion so we continue to create meaning with our stories? Or was it that we were created to need meaning because the only one who can fill this meaning need is God? I've always believed the latter, but I find it difficult to know how to articulate why this is more true than the former. Or can they both be true? Thank you so much for your time. I truly appreciate this. Always curious, Andrea.
How do you feel about that letter now? Where are you at with respect to that letter?
I can't believe how much I actually remembered, because I basically said all those things, but I just said it more quickly in my little email. I was feeling so many things. Like, I can read this without feeling the same. I can read it without feeling the angst and the anguish and I was in a dark night of the soul at the time I wrote you. I was in such a dark place because I felt so torn with modernity and, oh, well, we know better. We know why we have stories, because it's just what we need as evolutionarily. That's what humans came to need and was vital for our survival. And that's why it matters. That's why we need meaning, because look at how we have thrived as a society. So we just continue on what has worked in the past. I was having a sort of binary this or that. And I also was having almost more of a 2D perspective. I felt, and after I can look back going through that time, and I had this, it's like calluses were growing on my view to what was beyond. And the scales were growing to that materialistic way of looking at the world and the worldview. And I was very limited. It was limiting me. And I knew I was missing things, because I knew, and I also knew that I can't put God in a box. So I'm sort of having this double thing of, I might be wrong about some things, and I don't have all the answers. And God maybe isn't what I think he is. And I'm also not having a view of him anymore, because I'm being bogged down by the callousness of the materialistic, naturalistic, scientific worldview. And so I was sort of like, but I also knew that it was not bad what was happening, but I was frustrated and feeling so confused, because I also knew that it was good. Like, this is good to remove God from my box that he was in, like to allow him to be like, if he's infinite, then my finite box cannot contain him. But as that was happening, I'm feeling far away from him. He's feeling bigger and bigger, and I'm feeling more overgrown with materialism. And I don't mean it in like the material like stuff, you know. I'm sorry, with scientism type stuff.
So did Peterson address this process, or did Peterson provoke this process?
He provoked it, and then I sorted it out. Basically, first, your email helped me. Do you want me to read your reply, or do you?
Sure, I'm kind of curious what I wrote.
Okay, so first I'll read what you wrote me. Then I'll give you the answer of how I got out of the dark night.
Okay.
How I've made my way through to the light. So, thanks, Andrea, for your note. I love Ben's heart and tenacity he brings to his work. You ask good and hard questions. I'll see if I can be helpful. Meaning seems to be both something we find or discover in the world and something we contribute to, see, or project into the world. We make meaning and we discover meaning. And you're right, that narrative is a big part of it. It is, I think, our operating system. Ben had a conversation with John Vervaeke where Vervaeke noted that in many ways we are that autobiography you know to be you. I think in many ways this is one of the best understandings of what our soul is. We are stories that are embodied. One of the questions I'm fascinated by recently is what sort of stories we are. We are not like stories in a book made up of words. Oh no, I'm getting emotional. Dang it, Paul. I was fine for my email and now yours is... Ugh. So we are not like stories in a book made up of words. We are stories in flesh made up of action. So actually there's a lot more, but okay. I didn't even need the rest because that was the part for me. That was the thing that I needed to hear. And I'll send it to you so you can read the rest. But
okay.
But that was the thing. And so after reading that, I knew about Jonathan Pageau, but I dove in. Like I dove in to his symbolism and symbolic world. And it honestly, that being embodied and a participation with symbolism, participating in story and Christ becoming being made flesh and dwelling among us, participating thus in the story of humanity. That is what opened my eyes and like broke through the crust that was growing over top of my symbolic eye, you could say. And it was very much like I didn't even think of it, but like that chrysalis that was forming, like I emerged another person and someone who is okay to question and to be wrong. I had cultivated that a lot, but in the past, but even more so, and someone who is in a space to find out who I am in my new understanding of what it means to participate in the human story with the divine, and knowing that there's so much more than what we see in our perception in our modern way of seeing the world. You know, and that is where my YouTube channel took its turn towards story, towards meaning, because I wanted to look at it from the outside in. I didn't want to start as a Christian. I wanted to start with like, well, how do we find our meaning as human beings? What makes us, what gives our why? You know, he who has a why can bear any how. And so I just, there was a shift in me. And so but I was still curious. I was still looking to understand and to learn and to have experts, you know, in their different areas on my channel. But I moved away from the scientist experts and what's going on in the intellectual dark web space and in freedom of speech type space. And like, I was kind of into that, but I moved way more into like meaning and why people choose what they do for their meaning and such. So
your channel has, so when, for a long time you were doing conversation type things on your channel, and you had me and Jonathan Peugeot, you had David Fuller, you had Justin Brierley. I mean, you went out and got a bunch of interesting people. You had, who's that guy that you and I spoke to a couple of times? I can't think of his name right now.
Which guy?
I only connected with him through, and we're talking about talking to Chris Kavanaugh. Yeah. That'll be fun.
Oh, I'm very much hoping that'll work out.
I'd like to get into some things. Anyway.
Okay, that was an aside.
Yeah. But you've transformed your channel quite a bit now. You're doing something very different with your channel.
I have. So it's always been a journey. So I started off with like a weird title that nobody understood, and so I scrapped it. Of what I used to call. So I changed. I just decided to call my YouTube channel Andrea with the Bangs, because that's me. Like I'm Andrea with the Bangs.
Right.
My podcast is called She Wonders Why, and it's always been. I'm like sorting out what am I. I just want to know what the things are, and like I need to look into what's going on with the world as I see it, as I understand it, and whatever sparks my interest, I want to pursue that lead and to bring understanding to, like, what are we doing here? Why am I here? What, usually in that meaning space. And so that's why I've sort of have that broad but specific enough title, like She Wonders Why, and then Andrea with the Bangs, because it just very much mean what I'm like moving through in my life. So I really looked into the meaning thing and narrative and understanding that. And I also at the same time started looking into femininity and understanding who I am as a woman, and how I partake in, like, say, the divine feminine. And so, that's my channel. And so Paul, I like growing up without a father. I missed a lot. I missed a lot of understanding, like, what it means to be a woman who is like loved by a father figure, and my mom did the best she can and the best she could. But there's a lot of questions where I didn't understand. I did not understand what I had. Like, I didn't understand what, like, I just was I was 33 coming onto Twitter, and I had no idea. The world of men. I was married even. I had no concept. I was a little fawn amongst wolves.
You make me think of that song from Sound of Music. I am 16 going on 17.
I know, and it's so sad that I was in my 30s. I was in my early 30s, but I didn't I didn't go out and party.
I'm almost 60.
Like,
I still don't know a world of. I still can't figure out women. So,
but I was such. Sounds so horrible to say. I was such a good girl. I didn't go out and rebel. I didn't go and partake and learn. What is this world of men?
Do you regret that?
No, not really.
Regret it. You shouldn't regret it.
No,
I know too many people who did and have regrets.
I know how fragile my little heart is, and it would have been absolutely ripped to shreds. I know it. I know it would have. And I didn't know, like, I didn't know the power of, and I'm not saying this in a way that in these sort of identity politics, sort of like power. I'm not looking to say, like, and then the feminine being more powerful than the masculine. That's not the space I'm going. But what I mean is, I didn't understand the power of femininity. I didn't understand that the flame, the flame, like the depths of the flame of, like, womanhood that I embodied. I didn't understand. I didn't understand its effect on men. I didn't understand what I had. I didn't understand. I'm old now, so, like, whatever. Like, I'm close to 40. I understood it, and then as my youth is now gone, I understood it at the end. That's fine. That's fine.
Did you see Peterson and Louise Perry?
I've watched Louise Perry. I watched her on Modern
You should
Wisdom
see
with Chris
Peterson and
Williamson.
Louise Perry on Maiden and Mother and
Yeah.
Matron.
Oh, yeah, I do know those different. I've talked with Nicholas Kotar about the feminine, the heroine's journey.
Oh, okay.
And so we talked about those different roles.
Okay.
And so yeah, and I am so I was a mom in my 20s and into my 30s, and yet I was still so naive and unknowing. And like again, I'm trying to embrace. I sound like, I don't want to sound too regretful. I'm okay that I didn't use my femininity for bad. I didn't
Well,
for
that's
evil.
good.
But no, I know. But like, what I mean is, like, I didn't.
Andrea used her femininity for evil.
Okay, I didn't understand I even could. I didn't even understand that I had any capacity to do such a thing.
Well, blessed are you.
But it's important to know your arsenal of weapons and know that, like, I am purposefully keeping these away because I know and I understand. So, it is, you should know. People need to know. And I needed to know. I needed to understand it. And I knew I was missing it. I've always been the kid who wanted to understand the reference in the kids show. Like I said this to you in the past. Like when I was watching Animaniacs and I wanted to know the adult references that I knew were there, and I knew I didn't understand it. And it was over my head, but I saw that it was over my head, and I knew that I didn't get it. So I'm someone who needs to know, and that's what I was pursuing, and I think that's what a lot of my vintage fashion has been part of, is exploring my femininity and understanding what is the feminine and what am I participating in that I didn't even know what I was participating in.
Yeah.
And so those are things that I was looking into narrative, and I was looking into like where the feminine also the place it holds within narrative. Like, what's my part of the story? Those sorts of things. And so now I actually have come to a point where I have learned enough to know that I don't know everything about these subjects, because I've made this joke to you before, much like Socrates, I know what I don't know. But I've learned enough. Wow, I just sounded so ridiculously hubristic and prideful there. Oh, well, that happens. It's okay. I'm allowed. We all slip into hubris at one time or another in our lives. But I now know that I know enough about these subjects that I can start talking about them as if I have a measure of authority on them. Like I've lived out, and that's part of the Discord. The part of the Discord has helped me grow in understanding femininity as something to be participated in, and not you can't just talk about it. That's not something that you will ever learn what it is through speech. You have to do it. Has to be participated in, and so the ladies who did the knitting club over on Bridges of Meaning, learning to not only knit, like they taught me to knit, but just learning participating in these ancient textile arts of my feminine ancestors, and then chat in the group about such things and wherever. And so I lived, like, that's part of this whole thing, is like I not only spoke and learned, I lived these things. And so that's where I come up with my very prideful sounding comment. I've done enough that I now can share what I've learned.
Okay.
And so that's where I have my channel is now, is I am looking into the films of our time, are the narratives of our time, what we participate in, our stories, the stories we tell about ourselves and how we see ourselves. And so now I do interviews still, but I'm focusing around cinema and television. And I can also do just a general like chat about story. That's my chat with Nicholas Kotar about the the heroine's journey. Like, it doesn't have to be about a movie necessarily, but I am wanting to have a bit more of a focus and hone in on our modern narratives, which is film, and the feminine within these. So not exclusively, but looking at, like, for example, I look at Galadriel according to Tolkien and somewhat Peter Jackson, and Galadriel according to Rings of Power. I compare and I can't compare them. I contrast them. Okay. So, that's an example of one of the things I've looked into from my new sort of rearranged, rebranded channel. So yeah.
Okay. And what's church life for you now?
Oh, Paul, this is going to be so long now. Oh, yeah. Okay. Why'd you bring that up? Okay. So I've been going to church.
That's what I always talk to people about.
I know, it's just, it brings up so much more. So I've been going to church. Like, obviously during COVID, I didn't go, and you were my online pastor during COVID. I appreciated that. So, but now I've been going to church, and I have been participating. We joined a small group, and we go. However, I've been very torn because, like, I have a number of friends, both online and offline, who are Orthodox, and I've been, participating in the symbolic world. There's a lot of Orthodox people there with Jonathan Peugeot, and listening to the Lord of Spirits podcast. And, even I've been connecting with, Richard Rowland, and he has some people in his circle that I've connected with there. And look, one of the guys I had on to talk about Tolkien, actually, I've connected with his wife through Facebook. His name's Reno Loro, and he's has a degree, or a bachelor, a PhD in understanding Tolkien in our modern context, and mythopoeic something in the modern age, and people escaping into such things, and why that's good. Hyper realities within the modern, it's mythopoeia in the modern age, and then escaping hyper realities. Anyways, I memorized that for the chat I had with him. Anyways, so I've been chatting with his wife, and so they're Orthodox, and she's been telling me a little bit about where they're coming from in choosing Orthodoxy. And so, but I mean, my husband is like, I don't know nothing about Orthodoxy and the Orthodox world, and it's a big deal, and you don't just do it lightly. You don't convert lightly. And I'm just trying to think, is it strong enough? Can I not be a Christian and within Protestantism and just be like, yeah, don't agree with that, don't agree with that, don't agree with that? There's so many things about in our Protestant worldview that I am so done with and so frustrated with, because it's just, I grew up in such a space of, and this is the right way. This is the right way to do it. And I think the
Orthodox don't say this is the right way to do it.
I know they do. I know, but they submit. At least you submit. At least you submit to church authority. I go to a non-denominational church. They have no authority, but I suppose the elders and God.
And the Bible.
Sorry, you're right. The Bible, that in my opinion can sometimes be lifted up a little bit too much, in my opinion. With they get squirrely about icons. Well, we, my friends, have our own icon, and it is called the Bible. You can lift it up and worship it to a point. You can allow yourself the same way you can allow yourself to have a stop sign at the icon and just look at that rather than looking at where it points to. I'm not saying the Bible is an idol. I'm saying people can stop looking where it's pointing to and look at it like it's a signpost. It's pointing up. It's pointing at God.
So you'd be a very good Protestant if you chose Orthodoxy.
I know, and that's why I have not converted, because I'm like okay, Paul, you have hit on the thing that that's why I've not converted, because I'm like, I'm literally doing Protestantism in my very conversion.
Yeah.
Because I would be, my own personal beliefs are in conflict. And so I am being drawn to what I think is right over on the Orthodox space. And so so you bring up church and I'm like, oh no, because this is my conflict now. And I am so torn because I feel like I'm okay to stay right now, but like I literally was Christmas Eve. My pastor, whose name is also Paul, he says, okay, I'd like to do the Jesus prayer without saying I'd like to do the Jesus prayer. For anyone who's not normally part of our congregation and who's come to participate in the Christmas Eve service, because that's what you do, Christmas and Easter, and not so many words. And he literally, I was like, oh, great, let's say some magic words. And then he literally prayed, now these are not magic words. And I was like, God, what are you trying to tell me? So my cynicism, my cynical words were said back to me in the very prayer that the pastor was trying to convey to any potential new believers, So I'm torn after reading Tom Holland's Dominion. Tom, if you're listening, I'm still waiting to hear back from you. As if he's an hour and 16 minutes into this.
In the Freddie and Paul show, we're always calling out to, Snoop Dogg. And so
yeah,
Tom Holland,
Anyway, but he's always so quick to be like, I'm so sorry, Andrea, I'm busy right now, but please get back to me.
He's a very nice man.
He's very quick to get back to me when he's busy. I know, but when he's available, I'm bad at follow-up emails. I try to give people space and it's like a month. Like, oh, I should have done a 2-week one. Anyway, but after reading Dominion, I was like, yeah, what you described, I understand. I understand the Protestant way of thinking. It slivers off and it slivers off and it slivers off. That's its weakness. It is very much it's centered around protestation rather than we are united. We're united in our protest.
Did you see my recent video on the autodidacts?
No, I haven't.
You should watch that one because it very much pertains to exactly what you're talking about. And I really want to. It was Sam that really hit on that. Mm-hmm. And of course Sam is brilliant. And it's so fun. I just kind of keep. I put the chat over in another screen so it's not right next to me, because that would really be distracting. But it's just amazing the number of people that are from that OG BOM group that are still with us and really still very much a part of this conversation. Well, before my thinking was to do a live stream is that I would at some point turn on the chat again on my
I forgot that people would be commenting.
They are.
Oh my goodness, how many people have I offended about Protestantism? I am one of you. Okay.
I don't know that you've offended anyone in this little corner, because I think this a big part of this whole of our corner of this little corner is exactly what you just laid out here.
Okay. That's probably why I got
Luke was just screaming to jump in, but we'll keep Luke at bay for a minute. And before we open it up to all of the randos in the comments who might want to jump in now, anything you wanted to ask me before we get distracted by the plurality of voices that rush in?
Is there anything I want to ask you? I mean, I've already asked you, like if we're going to stay in the same vein, I've already asked you, why you're.
I didn't want to open it up without giving.
Well, okay. You know what? Instead of going, people, I'm happy to continue along this vein, but I'm going to be selfish and look at so. What do you think? I always send you my little videos because they're really short now.
They are.
And what do you think of my pivot? It's not even that much of a move from what I was already doing, but what do you think of my change in the channel? What do you think of it now?
I'm going to tell you exactly what what I tell my older sister. So my older sister also has a YouTube channel, and her YouTube channel's name is Ann Clay, The Primitive Home. But my sister is one of these artists that is so high in openness. She is always all over the place. And she recently is pivoting her channel in 10 different directions. And what she didn't realize was that she's got about 16,000 subs, and you can't pivot a channel with 16,000 subs without pissing off a lot of people, because they come here for primitive home decorating things, and then suddenly you have like these weird little horror movie things that you're making, and you want to get into ASMR, and you want to get into sleep videos with nature scenes, and yeah, it's like,
okay, Paul, mine is a little. Okay,
this is all getting up to say, I really want to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing.
Okay.
Because I think you're doing the right thing. And when I listen to you, as I listen to you work through your story, you, like myself, like many others in this little corner, we are using YouTube to find each other, to work through our stuff together. And we're smarter together rather than alone. And, a lot of the stuff that Grim Grizz says about this stuff, about being virtually not alone and breaking down the fourth wall and participating, you are doing just that. And I can see with your new videos, it's a very different approach. And so now you're sort of instead of, going out and getting experts or, people out there and mining them for wisdom, which is absolutely fine. It's part of the reason I don't tend to go out. And every now and then, if I really want to talk somebody out there, I'll pull them into the channel. I might get Mary Harrington in, because what I usually want from them is, everybody does the same interviews on YouTube, generally speaking. They're all asking the same questions. All those questions are sort of sourced from what's going on right now in the zeitgeist, what's the hot thing, and YouTube sort of runs off that energy. But I'm far more interested in people's stories, how they got to where they are now, because
hers is super interesting. From the little bit she's talked about.
Yeah, I do want to. I have to send her a note, and hopefully she'll say yes. But it kind of freaks people out with authors, especially because they come on and they basically coming on to do their book and their book tour, and it's like, I don't care that much about your book. I want to know what made the book. I want to know who you are. And so that's why
that's nice.
That's why this shape of this conversation, which of course anybody who watches my other Randos conversation knows, because in many ways the people can write wonderful books out there, and there are amazing books out there, but amazing books come from amazing people. And the truth is, amazing people write mediocre and lousy books too. And so if you can actually see the person behind the book, you're probably going to see what's even more amazing than the product that they produce. So I want to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, because I see it very much as a continual evolution of your growth, of She Wants to Know. And now, instead of just having Jonathan Peugeot or David Fuller or Justin Brierley or Tom Holland, you've listened. And part of the reason I don't go out there and get a lot of big names is because they're already, why should I redo what Chris Williamson or Jordan Peterson or, why should I redo what these other channels are doing? I'm glad they're doing it, and I can watch the videos because they're asking all the standard questions, and every now and then they'll say something. But you're digging into these things, and I don't want you to get this. This is what I tell my sister all the time. Don't get discouraged by the numbers.
I'm very stagnant. Like, my channel has been the same for quite a while.
You can see Critical Drinker. The truth is, Critical Drinker's videos, they're just, little almost randomly segmented things from, the videos are just distractions.
Yeah.
He sometimes has interesting things to say about it. I really like Damien from, you know, is he in well, he's way out east. He's on the science fiction channel. He does really good videos. And, you know, the space you're working is a really crowded space in YouTube land.
Yeah.
But don't stop. If you find this productive in terms of your heart and your soul, keep making those darn videos, and just don't care what the algorithm thinks, because again, you're not saying this because I got to feed my children, I need 1 million subs on YouTube.
I'm making things that I would have wanted to see when I was in the space I was in a few years ago.
Right.
Like, I would have loved to see these things,
and that's why Lewis wrote Narnia, and that's why Tolkien wrote Middle Earth. That is the reason to do what you're doing, and so keep at it.
I mean, honestly, thank you. That's very kind of you to say. I always appreciate hearing your feedback, and like on my comment sections like are so full of like wonderful, kind people. Like I feel very blessed with the audience I have been able to gather, and that I have been blessed with. They're really wonderful people. So I do see the merit of having a smaller channel. I mean, any artist who puts together something would like to be seen, but I don't look at it as like in business terms. I'm bad at business anyway, but at business in general. But I do see, I see people connecting. I've connected with some people, like other gals like me have contacted me, and I've had connections through the channel, and obviously through you and Bridges of Meaning, but through the channel, like, people are like, oh, this is something that I've been thinking, and like, oh, it's glad to see that I'm not crazy, and you saw this too, things like that, and I just enjoy to be able to be part of that. So thank you. Thank you for all the kind things. You always have such wonderful, kind things.
I want to put yourself out there in this YouTube space or in the Twitter space is not easy, and there's not enough encouragement for people, and all of the encouragement by the platforms is all in the wrong direction. All of this encouragement is to sell your soul to these platforms and to the world, and you're not doing that. So I want to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, because the truth is, you don't need 1 million people. In fact, 1 million people would be tremendously distracting, because then suddenly you're dealing with this sort of cyber monstrosity, and you can't distinguish all the voices. Now, it brings lots of opportunity. I get that. It can bring lots of money. All of those things are fine. But what we as human beings, we have a very limited number of people that we can actually deal with and grow to love and get to know, which is why we don't have families. It's why we don't spawn like fish. We have families of a certain number of children, and your husband and your sons. And I mean, this is where we are designed to flourish, and where we make our impact. So I do want to encourage you, partly because I also know that in this internet space, I make lots of videos, and I talk about things that I only know halfway enough about, or maybe not even enough. And there are lots of smart people on the internet who have read way more than I have, and remember more than I have, and know more than I have, and blah, 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 blah. And all of that can lead you to just shut the channel down and tighten up the circle. And I think that's wrong. I think if we have a spirit of learning and humility, we can use these tools to actually bless each other and be blessed through them. So I just want to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, and don't you worry a minute about, my poor sister, somebody leaves a negative comment, it just impacts her, and it doesn't impact me. as much, but I get very defensive when people get trollish on the internet, and that's when I get trollish too, because it's like, hey, don't discourage people from doing the right thing.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah. All right, shall we open it up to these crazy
Let them
people
loose. Let them loose. Sure.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Here comes the link. Dum da dum da dum.
Oh, an hour and a half. Just hit it. Hit it, an hour and a half.
There's the link.
Oh. Should I?
No, you don't have to do anything.
Okay.
People will find their way in here.
Yeah, I was actually slow, by the way, because I wasn't prepped quickly, because not only because I was having the technical issues. I was making a video about the Oscars last night.
Oh, good.
Just a little one, because I didn't watch it, and I'm sad I didn't watch it, because it actually it was good. The good stuff won, and I was like, oh, I missed a good one. I thought it'd be all last year.
The Anselman writes. I didn't even know Anselman. I get. Does Anselman have a YouTube studio, a YouTube channel? Holy cow! You know, if I get to Scotland, Anselman's definitely a guy I want to. Oh, look who's here!
Hey, Cass. Long time no see.
Hello. Nice to see you all.
Yeah.
How you doing, Cassidy?
Good. How are you? It's funny. I saw you go live, and then me and Faraday had dinner, and so I had to double speed so that I could catch up, and I caught up right at the end.
Yay! Yeah, we're here now. Oh, that's so funny. Yeah. Oh man, how did it go with me talking twice as?
Oh, it's fine. I've trained my ears.
Oh, good.
No, I didn't used to do double speed, but I have a problem, and now I need to listen to things double speed because I feel like there's not enough time. And so now when I listen to things slow, I'm like, wow, people talk really slow.
All right. Mark Lefevre has a question. What is her favorite interview and favorite topic on her channel?
Oh, thanks, Mark. Hi. Mark always he always supports my vintage fashion, and he always likes it on my Instagram and my Twitter. Whenever I share my vintage photos. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. I see your support. Okay, so honestly, my favorite interview, and it actually doesn't take me that much. I had a discussion with Richard Rowland about C.S. Lewis's The Discarded Image.
Oh, and you mentioned me. You emailed me about that, and I never followed through.
Oh, I don't remember emailing you about it. Well, what was it about? You
said Richard Rowland wants to talk about C.S. Lewis and The Discarded Image.
Oh, right, I did. Yeah, you didn't follow through. Oh well, it's not too late. So I loved that because I had read The Discarded Image in the Bridges of Meaning book club, and it was dense. And it's not really dense. It's like 150 pages, but it's like, oh, this is Oxford Professor C.S. Lewis. Because this is not Narnia Aslan Lewis, and I got it, air quotes, but I didn't really get it. And so Richard explained it to me in a way I could understand, and it helped me to see what I'm talking about, having modern eyes versus say medieval eyes. And I know I can never actually go back to that, but it opened he gives such amazing examples about how, when the medieval person looks up into the night sky, it's almost more like they're looking up atop, they're at the bottom of, say, a skyscraper looking up. Whereas we look into the vastness and emptiness of space and feel small. They feel like, oh, look at all the ether and the spheres with its music playing and the world's just full. It's full. It's basically the night sky is full, but not in the vast emptiness. It's actually it's not empty, it's full. I didn't do a good job. Watch if you're interested, watch the video.
All right.
But
All right.
it helped me. Okay, here's another example of why I still remember this. He was saying how the different like vices of, say, gluttony or something. He said, we can nowadays say that's not healthy to just like eat whatever you want all the time and just have 10 desserts and whatever. But he's like, the people in the medieval world who Lewis is writing about in the discarded image, they would say, in gluttony, you deaden your soul to God. And I'm like, what did you just like? It blew me away. You could say these words, but like the way, like anyone could say that phrase, but in the context of me just reading this book and him explaining it to me in a way that I could understand, and giving anecdotes, he gave me little examples like that. It helped me to comprehend how different we see the world now, and how versus the past. So anyway, thank you for asking, Mark.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Bruce, welcome.
Hello, how are you guys?
Good.
Gals?
Good. Now here's a good, anybody can jump in with these two if you want to. As all three ex-missionaries, what still jars about home after all these years? And Cassidy, I mean, you're now living across the pond.
Yeah.
One of the huge differences I find in the developed world versus, say, the Dominican Republic is the difference between time and money. It's in this world, some people have time, some people have money, and what you can get out of them is one or the other. Getting time out of people who have more time than money, easy. The other way around, hard. It's the values. It's so easy to be completely embedded in the world that you live in, and if you've only lived in one world, there's a naivete which isn't a bad thing, but it's a dominant thing. So I don't know if anybody else has a thought.
Well, I mean, I was never a missionary when I went and traveled different places, but I have lived in, this is my third country I've ever lived in. And then probably my fourth culture I've ever lived in, because living in the Bay Area, that is different. Same country, different culture.
Yeah.
And it's funny, they were all the countries I've lived in are Western, yet they're all distinctly different.
Yeah.
They all like teach me and shape me in different ways. And so this is the first country living in where I don't know the language. Well, I'm learning the language, but I wasn't born with the language. Luckily, Dutch people are pretty good at speaking English. So
Yeah.
there's ways
Some
to get
of them really good.
Most of them, it makes it hard to learn Dutch because you start stumbling your way around in Dutch and they just speak to you in English and you're like, okay, we're doing this.
Yeah.
But I think there is something about, there's something distinctly different about traveling a lot and embedding yourself in a different culture. Because I've traveled a lot, but a lot of my travels have been living year plus in a different country. And it's just a totally different experience than, say, even staying 6 months in a place. And like, I think it's just sort of, I think it's broken a lot of my categories of like what it is to be human. And like, I think especially living here now, it's kind of, it's like shaking me up to understand like, oh, hey, we can speak the same language, but we can be also talking past each other in totally different, like we can be speaking the same common tongue, but different languages. And I think kind of gets you outside of your head of being so confident in the way that I see the world and everybody knows this. Well, no, they don't, even if they speak the same language. It's like you just can't live with that confidence as much anymore. And it's like both like empowering and exciting and terrifying all at the same time.
Mm.
Because you're like, well, how do I ground myself in my world now?
Mm.
Here's an interesting question for you, Andrea. If you have to use a set of song lyrics to describe you, what is the song?
Oh no, I have no idea. Ugh. I'm so bad with things like this because I'm like, well, I want to get it right, and I don't like to get things wrong. Oh, Paul, can you help me? I don't know. Can anyone help? I don't know.
How could I answer that question
I don't
for
know.
you? I can't answer that question for myself.
I'm not like a music aficionado. I like no. Okay, like okay, you know what? I'm gonna take this opportunity to explain my music tastes, and you can go from there. So I don't. Instead of saying song lyrics, so I'm the person who doesn't have one album. I have not one album on my playlist. I have stuff about mostly stuff from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and it's mostly like happy-go-lucky doo-wops type songs.
All right.
So
all right.
that's it. That's what it is. It's just like happy-go-lucky, fun crew cuts from the. Well, we'll just say, okay, you know what? I'll do it. Earth Angel from Back to the Future. That's the one I'll go with. And it's not me. It's just how I feel in the world.
All right. Well, welcome, Hezi. Thanks for jumping in. Bruce, Hezi, Cassidy, any of you have questions for Andrea, or did you want to put out a topic? Or
I'll just say one thing. So I met you quite a long time ago, Andrea, on BOM.
Okay, so it's been a while, and I recognize your voice more than seeing you.
Yeah, probably it wasn't on camera. Maybe not.
Okay.
Anyway, I don't want to open the can of worms, but I remember us saying, "Hey, we should talk more sometime about biblicism," and then I don't think we ever followed up. But I'm very intrigued.
Remember that? I'm scared. What? I don't remember what biblicism even means. Like, do you mean about turning the Bible into like an idol kind of thing, or?
Yeah, or folks that are like no creed but the Bible, right? That's kind of the standard trope, and biblicism sort of gets into a position where all teaching comes from the words written in Scripture alone. Anything extra biblical doesn't add or assist in any way what is revealed directly in Scripture. And so anyway, we were speaking about it, and I think at the time I was navigating BOM, and I was like, how do I navigate these people? Because I was assuming I was running into a Reform server because I found Paul, and I ran into a server of ecumenical people, and then they were. I think I was in the Van Tillian presuppositionalist world, and I was assuming I could utilize these ideas and discussions. And it's not that they don't work or anything, but they just weren't interesting to folks. But you seemed to chime in, and I was like, maybe she has something to say about that. But anyway, that was the question was. The question was just, we should talk about that, or do you still have feelings about that, I guess?
No, I do. Okay, so I do. So this is another reason why I'm like, am I better suited in Orthodoxy versus staying in Protestantism? Because I think that the way that the Bible is taught without even being taught how it came to be, the fact that I did not learn as a kid in Sunday school throughout all my years of being hi Luke, a staunch church-going, little lady. I never learned how the Bible was put together. I had to go to Bible school. I had to go to in university taking Bible classes, learning why didn't the Shepherd of Hermas get put in? Why not the Didache? Mm-hmm. There are books that are perfect, could be perfectly sound doctrine, but they're not there, and it's just basically through church tradition and who had what books that just refined, and then it got codified at different ecumenical councils. And I wish that was taught more, and two, I'm okay with looking at the harrowing of hell and knowing that this is stuff being described that is happening in hell, like from the perspective of Christ coming in all his glory and triumph during the time that he was in the grave. I'm okay to look at that and see it for something that can inform me and help me to understand the victory in Christ in a way that I wouldn't have had I not read that. Sorry, I listened to it. I listened to it being read on a podcast, but still. So like it's not. I'm not afraid of these other books, like the Book of Enoch and whatnot. Like, you know, so many Dead Sea Scrolls translations, and I know Jacob, you'd know about that. So like these books are not bad. I'm okay with looking at them. So I think that something that's perhaps needing to be a conversation more often within the Protestant church, to look at these other books not as heretical, because they're not. Like, there are some heretical Gnostic gospels that this is considered heretical by the Orthodox Church. You know, as far as I know, like the Gospel of Thomas is not considered okay. It's considered heretical, but there are other books that are not heretical that we can look at and glean things from. All right. That's my long answer.
Good. Thank you, Bruce. Anybody else in here have a question for Andrea, or you wanted to let me just pop in Sam's. What gives someone the chutzpah to feel like they have to add something to the crowded space of YouTube podcasts?
Oh, just narcissism.
I think it's not just putting out information. I think it's participating in the conversation. So.
Okay, yeah, that's a better answer. We'll go with that, Paul.
All right, Hezi was next. What's up, Hezi?
First of all, hello all. I actually I've missed Andrea. She was a lot more. I saw her a lot on Paul's channel back in the day, and so I was very happy to see you over here. If you don't mind me asking. So Paul and you guys were rediscussing your own journey, and now you're telling us, even your last statement about what you think should be part of the discussion, right? Whether these books should have been included or shouldn't have been included. But on the ground, and after a few years of this little corner, how do you bring it back home, not just to yourself, but to your kids? Because ultimately, now you're the educator. You've been out there in the world, and this relates to the autodidact conversation Paul was talking about. But you're looking now at your children, and you could create new guidelines or another perimeter, sort of where you want them to be learning what you misunderstood or where you missed out. So how do you filter the things you're learning out here and bring it home to them? What is the toolkit you're providing them with?
Okay, so the way that it's because you don't want to just be too preachy at them. Like so I try to do it in when the thing comes up. So the other day we were talking about Easter, and I just do these little, like, what is Easter again, guys? It's when Jesus defeats death. And that's something that I've been specifically saying over the past number of years, because my very Protestant answer growing up would have been, oh, it's when Jesus dies on the cross, and yeah, also rises again, I guess. But it's when Jesus dies on the cross, And so it's just little, but it's just a way of framing it. Like, Jesus defeats death. That's a big thing that happens at Easter that I felt was not communicated or highlighted to me growing up. So it's subtle, small things. It's being ready when it comes up, the things that might be, for example, we just finished reading The Lord of the Rings. It took us 2.5 years, and we did it. And like I was talking about the Lady Galadriel. And I was like, hey boys, who does the Lady Galadriel remind you of? And so I listened to a podcast called Amansul. It's a Christ and Tolkien podcast. And some of the themes found in Tolkien, they've looked at Mary and her influence on some of Tolkien's characters. And Galadriel is one of them. And you can see her helping them in the midst of going on their journey. And so I asked them, like, who does she remind you of, guys? Like when they're basically like saying prayer, like help us, please, and then she comes through and my son was like, she reminds me of Jesus. And I was like, yeah, totally. Like also one could say Jesus' mom, Mary as well, being there on the more feminine side, helping them on that side because she's a lady and Mary's mom or Jesus' mom is a lady and she helped them, and that I see parallels there. And my kids were just confused. Like, oh, okay. So that's one that I definitely I clearly didn't explain that one well enough, but I'm just introducing it because that's another one of like Mary. I've changed my perspective on her and looking at her as someone has more of a place than I ever thought that she had. And so again, as it comes up, I'm just doing my best to see where the gaps were and share them. And hopefully if the kids have questions, try to just do my best to navigate that with them. So it's not a lot of things. It's just kind of just little things that get brought up through life.
Cassidy, did you have anything you wanted to bring in? I didn't really give you a chance to.
I mean, I didn't have a specific question. I mean, I just find a lot of the topics interesting. And I mean, I certainly have a similar journey to Andrea, being a filmmaker, interested in stories, creating on YouTube, struggling to figure out what that looks like and the ethics of all of those things, not only as like a creator, but like a consumer. Mm-hmm. But I love what Andrea said about creating things she wished she had seen several years ago, or like her past self had seen, because I think that's a far better way to engage with creation, that's going to lead to something more valuable versus what's going to get clicks and what's going to make you go viral on the YouTube sphere and what everybody's talking about 5 minutes ago, like or 5 minutes from now. And there's I think there's a lot of help with that. And I think I'm a millennial, and I think a lot of people in our generation, especially in this space, we grew up being told, don't talk about religion, don't talk about politics, you don't want to offend somebody or, ruin a family dinner. And then somewhere down the line, you realize, oh, those things are probably very important to talk about. And we have no idea how to talk about them. And then you just get culture war, nonsense and all of those things. And so I think it's a really tricky space to be in estuary, because in some sense you're talking about similar values or ideas that come around in the broader space, but it really is more aimed at exploration and like giving space to wrestle with those things versus promoting and defending and going to war on those things on like the grander scale. And like that's a tricky balance.
Andrea, I'm a little sensitive of time here. We're after 2 hours. I don't know if you have to run or anything.
No, I have some time.
Okay, and I have a little bit of time too. Jacob, did you have something you wanted to say? He asked in great terror.
Well, I was gonna kind of blow this conversation up a tiny bit by saying, if you don't want to be Protestant in your switch to Eastern Orthodoxy, why aren't you considering Catholicism?
I think that Catholicism is a really big part of the problem of the over-masculinization of religion. Even though I know that the Catholics have Mary, I definitely understand that. But I also see if you've read Dominion, the themes that I saw there were I wish that the Protestants would have reformed the Catholic Church, and I would be happy to stay there if they reformed it. But because of the way it is now, I kind of just want to skip over and just like go to the East, because there's a thing about there's a binary of this or that within the West, and the Catholic Church is very much a large part of the West and Western thinking, and modernist, humanist thinking all came out of the Catholic Church. And yeah, so I feel like it could be, I mean, it could be a lack of knowledge about, I learned about the Orthodox side of things a little in university, so I know too much about the Catholic Church, and I don't know enough about the Orthodox Church, perhaps. So that's the sort of like, I might be a little bit self-deprecating there and be like, maybe I just don't know enough about the Orthodox Church to be like, oh no, it's the same. But I don't think it's the same. There are things, there's a sort of understanding the mystery of, say, the Eucharist, where it's okay if it's both and that's in the East, from what I understand. Whereas in the West, it's sort of, it is or it isn't. It's just too binary, I think, for me. And that's a rough way to say it in these modern times. I'm not talking about gender. I'm just talking about sometimes something can be the same, like both and the West has a huge problem with handling that.
Well, and Catholicism and Orthodoxy are different. Like they're distinct.
They are. Yeah, I don't know enough about the differences, except for what I did, the things I described about much of the doctrine in the Catholic Church is this or that. It must be this way, and then the Protestants say it's that way. So, and it's like, as opposed to, no, it's the mystery. It's both and. We don't need to dissect it and open it up and be, you know. I feel like the Catholic Church is Saruman to me. That's what it is. It's like a fool, foolish is the one who opens the thing to just find out what it is and how it works or something like that. That's what Gandalf says, something like that to Saruman. So I don't know. That's just how I feel about it.
There's a spicy take. So
I could be wrong.
Luke's been wanting to get into this for a while now. So Luke, here you are.
So
quite the haircut.
Yeah, thanks. It's maybe not a compliment.
Who am I to judge?
No offense to anyone who's part of the Catholic Church. I'm so sorry. I just listened to what I said.
Named it Saruman. No offense.
No offense.
Well, to that point though, I think we need to be able to critique patterns and spirits without everyone latching self-identity to that and think that we're univocally like laying that label on every particularity within that unity. I mean, people need to just relax with that, in my opinion. Otherwise, how are we going to talk about anything and give our opinions about anything? So I think it is true. I mean, Sam is popping up in the comments. I agree with a lot of what you said. The way that I've really come to understand it is the difference between the scholastic mind and the Orthodox mind, which is characterized by the phronema of the church, I would say, which is fundamentally, it has a unity, but it allows for multiplicity. So it's not thought policing you. Whereas I think the West, in its magisterium and in its scholasticism, has, and not completely, but it is leaned toward mind colonization, which doesn't allow for you to actually think your own thoughts. And I think Protestantism is just like the further evolution of it.
Did you have a question for Andrea?
Just some thoughts. No, just some thoughts and comments.
Otherwise, we'll get to Andrew because I want to get everybody in who
popped
up into the thread. So
no,
Andrew,
I appreciate that. I appreciate hearing that because it was a better way of saying it than I said it. So.
Did you have a question, Andrew?
Generally, whenever I watch, I just like popping in, just so I'm not one of those perpetual lurkers.
Well, you want to play along?
Hi, Sam.
But generally, I think I can provide the opposite position from Andrea. Like Andrea's thinking about how do I relate this theological thinking, this symbolic world to my children. Meanwhile, I am coming from the opposite direction. I'm trying to deal with my parents who are, stultified in their materialism and, not going to change their traditions because that's what they grew up with and everything, so.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right. Here he is.
Hey, Sam.
Hey, Andrea. So on the theme of rescuing our father from the belly of the whale,
Okay.
I feel like one thing I worry about with orthocuriosity in this corner is that orthodoxy becomes this unknown box that we just attribute all of our favorite things to because Catholicism is Saruman. I can't attribute all my favorite things to Catholicism. I know too much about it. Orthodoxy, Christianity, that I know almost nothing about, all of my favorite things will get to go in that box, and that you create a figment of your imagination that has a dubious relationship perhaps to the real thing. And it's sort of like, I don't like my father. I'm going to invent a new father that I would like better than my current father, and I'll pick him and abandon my own father, which is harder and more difficult than I have the father I have. I'm going to have to rescue this one from the belly of the whale and not the other one. And so I wonder what you make of that as a possible pushback or challenge to some of what you were saying.
So everything you just said is exactly why I have not yet converted or pursued conversion, because of all the things you just said. Because one, am I putting orthodoxy on a pedestal? Am I just seeing the things that I like and not looking into it enough to see things that might be more difficult to handle? And I am torn. And it's fine. Like, that's okay for a while to be in a space where you're not sure. Like, I don't have anything against, like, I almost admire people who have, like, Cassidy, you made that jump over to Orthodoxy, and I admire that. And a lot of it is to do with, like, I have my kids, and I'm really afraid they're going to misbehave in the service. I know that's a natural truth. That's just that's a hard, like, well, that's a practical truth there. But a huge part of it is my motivation. Like, all the things you just described, is it because it's just too hard to reform and change, and not necessarily change, but get back to the roots of what we should be doing, which is what Protestantism was in the first place. And I just, like, go back to the early church, but I don't know that we can go back. We can't go back. We are now. And I know that that's sort of ironic to be like, and I want to go to the most traditional form of Christianity possible, the Orthodox Church that's the most unchanging. So I do see the irony there, but I am very torn because all the things you said have been in my mind, and I don't know what to do. So that's where I'm at. That's the hard truth of it.
Okay. We've got 15 minutes. I'm going to shut this down at 1:30. So free for all, he said, in fear and trembling. Hezi, you had something you want to say? You got to unmute.
Andrea, so your response to Sam, I think we all need to feel comfortable standing on, the line, to be comfortable with doubt. And in Maimonides, in the Guide to the Perplexed, he basically says that if we push ourselves to try to understand things that are past our understanding, there's a limit to what we could understand, what we could comprehend. And once we trick ourselves to feel like that we could comprehend more than we actually can, we end up fooling ourselves into these false certainties. And Maimonides gives an example of the four that went into the mystic world, into the Pardes. And Rabbi Akiva warns them, when you see the pillars of water, do not proclaim water, water, because you are assuming you understand what you're seeing in these depths. And I think we need to feel comfortable. I would say, according to Maimonides, that to get to perfection, to achieve perfection, is to realize that you're going to be doubtful of certain things. And I think that, the place you're in right now, your response to Sam about that is the reason, that's the exact reason why I'm not going down that path. I think it's a challenge, but can you find the place to be comfortable there, in that place, in that tension where you are, you're seeking? And I think this relates to why you're doing these videos. And Sam asks, what's the chutzpah? The idea is that you are constantly challenging yourself and engaging within yourself together with all of us. But I think it's healthy ultimately to feel comfortable with doubt. So I don't know if you have to necessarily rush to do one way or the other, but be in your space.
I appreciate that. That's nice to hear people be like, yes, you're okay to doubt. You can stay there. And I do. That's one of the things I do appreciate about being part of the Bridges of Meaning community. Is that it's okay to not know the answer. And in my journey of all the YouTubing and stuff that I've done and interviews, it's okay to be in a space where you say, I don't know. So thank you.
I mean, you look at someone like me who did convert to Orthodoxy, that was preceded by 5, 6, 7 years of incredible doubt and wrestling with the idea of atheism and Protestantism and Catholicism and all of these things, and planting myself in the place where it was like, well, this is what I think I believe, while also challenging those things and wrestling with those. And, Orthodoxy came in a place where all that started cracking. And I think I have a very, I wouldn't say unique, I guess, but I had an interesting entrance into that. But even when I found Orthodoxy, I still poked and prodded for 2 years. And I think as far as the Orthodox spirit, there is something about time that they're really patient religion. Even when I started going to catechism classes, the first class I went to, it was listen, we're here to tell you about Orthodoxy, but the church is always here. If you need to go look at Catholicism, Judaism, whatever, that's fine, but we're here to help you and bring you in if that's what you want. Even it was within the month that I was supposed to be chrismated, I said, okay, talk to my priest and go, I gotta look at Judaism a little bit, because it's the last little piece. I've looked at it, but it's the last little piece I haven't delved in with enough seriousness. And if I don't do that before I do this, I don't think I'll feel right. And they're like, great, go do it. And so there's that piece. And I think that's what I wish I could have seen more when I was a Protestant, of that trust and the exploration of that tension. And I think that's probably what you feel. But no, I think there's something beautiful to playing with that tension and staying where you feel you need to be, because you don't have that conviction to move.
All right.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Hey guys.
Hi.
Long-time listener, first time. I'm just wondering why, Andrea. It's been interesting to hear your story. Why are you interested? Why do you pick the word conversion when you're thinking about these different Christian sects? It's valid that you're using that, but I'm just wondering, why are you thinking about it as conversion on the same level as you would? Because normally people mean a different religion, converting to Buddhism or something, but converting to Orthodoxy from Protestantism. I'm just wondering what your.
I suppose it's because that's what I've heard used, people use before. And if you're saying I'm going to a new church, there's the assumption of that it's another Protestant church, I guess. And so I suppose it's more just being a little bit more direct in showing that there's a marked difference. But I don't know if I wish there was an in between. Like, oh, I'm attending a new church I converted to Orthodoxy. Is there an in between word? I flowed over to Orthodoxy. Is that a better way of saying it? I'm not sure, but that's a good question. Good observation.
I think that's what the catechumenate is for, you know, like I'm in this in-between space where I'm exploring Orthodoxy and not too sure yet, haven't been baptized. I don't have a date for baptism yet, you know, so yeah.
Well, it is weird because it's not just like I went from Baptist to a Calvinist church or, you know, or like a non-denominational church. There is like a whole different culture when you go to something much more high tradition. Mm-hmm. And so that, yeah, the switching church doesn't like quite seem like the right word. But also, like, I understand that tension with the idea of conversion as well. Mm-hmm. You know, it's I don't know what the right terminology might be, but conversion seems to be the one that we've clung on to have some certain common understanding of it.
Maybe don't say conversion yet, you know, because you still have to go through catechumenate, and, you know, priest has to get to know you, and then you'll get baptized and whatnot, and it doesn't end. So,
yeah, but you know, it's funny because there's a lot more of like complexity in the Orthodox faith, where like there's some priests that aren't just trying to get you converted into Orthodoxy, right? Like you look at Nathan Jacobs. The priest tells him, wait till your wife's ready. He waits 8 years. Like, that's not something I ever experienced in evangelicalism, right? Like, it's like, it's a sort of different mindset.
It's not, I wouldn't, I mean, anybody who's been around living stones know I'm not grabbing them and dunking them under the water. Come here a minute. Wham.
I don't mean that. I don't mean that every church, but like, I don't know. I think there is a different pace from it. And again, I was in some churches that were very evangelical and then some that were sort of mild. But I don't mean it like they're trying to sneak people in, but I don't know. I feel like if someone came to a pastor saying, I want to be Protestant, they wouldn't say, oh, wait till your wife is Protestant. They say, you become Protestant, practice the faith, and pray for her as she goes. I don't know. I mean, that's
Sam, you're wobbling your head, Sam.
I don't know. I could imagine different. I mean, Protestantism is just impossible to describe in one word. Yeah. It's not really one thing. It's a label for a bunch of different things, and you could get different reactions in a lot of different places.
It's the label for the dissolution of Christianity. That's what it is.
It does seem like the farther people get away from Protestantism, like the more monolithic it starts to look. And I think it becomes a catch-all for similar to what's been said about Orthodoxy, maybe. It's the opposite of smells and bells. It just becomes all these things that we don't find alluring anymore. All these like non-romantic features of religion that we associate with Western modernity, I suppose, and that's not the contours of Protestantism is a lot more varied than I think we want to give it credit for when we're leaving it, I guess. But.
I've been saying this for a while, and it doesn't really land with anybody but me, but I'm going to try to say it again.
Do it, Jacob.
When we talk about Protestantism, right, we're talking about those things which we see as unique to being Protestant, right? Those Protestant ideas that the Protestant Reformation brought into the world that have overtaken the Roman Catholic Church and very much so, I would say, Eastern Orthodoxy as we understand it in the United States. Those may be Protestant things, but that's not what we mean when we talk about Protestants. When we talk about Protestant, we are talking about those things which separate the Protestants from the Catholics in the United States and the Jews in the United States and the Eastern Orthodox in the United States. And the fact is, all of us, including the Jews and the Catholics in the United States, are very, very Protestant.
Well, I think, Jacob, if you saw the video, it wasn't on Navigating Patterns. It was actually on this channel, but on Big P and Small P Protestantism, where I think it was Gavin Ortland and Jordan B. Cooper were talking about, so you have sort of magisterial Protestant churches that are self-identified Protestant, but then you've got all of these churches that are just Protestant by default. And I think, as you say, quite right, Jacob, this vast cultural movement that has sort of made everyone Protestant, everyone act like a Protestant in the American church space. When I drive through Stockton, there's this Buddhist church, and it's like, because here these immigrants came to America, and that was the word that they used to do what they did. And it's actually, in American history, almost any religion that came to America had to act like churches. And increasingly the denominations
denomination, not just a church, but a
right.
denomination, right? Because not even like an old world kind. Yeah.
No. So it's I just can't. Whenever Jacob strokes the cat on his channel, I just think of Austin Powers.
This is Shadow. Say hi, Shadow.
Jacob's familiar. Oh, well, 2 minutes, lightning round. Andrea, I should just give you the floor, Andrea. You're the special guest today.
I was checking. I was like totally checking out. Shoot. I just
see, Andrea. Why you wonder why you're so loved and valued in this community? It's because you are honest and you are sincere and you are yourself, and that is the gift that you bring.
Yeah. No filters. Good times.
No filters. You are who you are. So.
Well, I guess thank you. I should say thank you for having me on and not, making me wait in line for a Randos conversation. I just waited a couple of years. That's all. That's fine.
There are people that have waited for longer.
Okay, well then, I guess I'm just one of the privileged.
Poor Gavin. Yeah, that's right. Andrew's always on. She's like, but Paul, I am your favorite. So she another line.
Do I say that?
Said.
Oh,
yeah, you've said it a number of times.
I'm so direct about things.
Well, thank you all, and I wish I could stay longer because, quite frankly, I could very easily do this all day, like my friend Jacob there. Sometimes he does, but I have some.
I will probably be doing in half an hour. I'll start at Just Chatting Stream.
Okay, so Jacob will be starting. Will that be on the Randos United channel or on your channel?
Yes.
Okay, so either place you can find Jacob doing his thing, chatting.
Preferably on Randos United, but my channel is also there. So
right. So the Randos United channel, is that the new and revised Randos United channel is where do we not have a name for this just chatting phenomenon yet, Jacob?
Well, so this is the thing. Mo has to take initiative and name stuff. I've been naming stuff too much already, but I think Randos United makes a lot more sense than just chatting.
Okay. All right. There it is. So, all right, I'm going to end the transmission.
Bye.